Alright, so we got this 75 or 6, I don't remember what it is, although it has the Silverado badges. It's a custom Deluxe C10. The swap was already started. We're trying to get it finished up. We ran into a problem with the injectors not pulsing. Kind of show you guys what we got going on here. If you look these connector end views up, the 2 wires going into the Multec plug are actually pinned backwards. From there it looked like they were pinned right going to the EV6 injectors, but if they're not pinned right at this plug, then they're not going to be pinned right at the injector. Of course, we made sure we had spark. We've got spark coming out of these MSD wires. Of course, we got fuel with the rail. Of course, my fuel pressure gauge adapter is leaking, so that's not accurate. But key on, we did have almost 60 pounds. So now I'm going through and taking out these plug-in adapters that weren't crimped very well. 2 of them weren't anyway. I'm using the solder butt connectors to get those in and get a solid connection. And we'll get them all taped and wrapped back up. Try to get the injectors firing off on this thing. We are real close to seeing this one run. Got the Dakota Digital inside. We've been waiting to button it up until we get it running. Make sure we get a fire off on it. We did put the Speed Engineering stainless long tubes and full exhaust system on this truck, so it should sound good. If I'm not mistaken, it's got a Texas Speed cam in it, if I do remember correctly. And of course, if you follow us on TikTok, you've probably seen this car. It's a 69 Nova. We've been working on the swap in. It's got a Holley Terminator X-Max, Magnuson supercharger. Same thing, we put some Speed Engineering long tubes on it. LS Simple front accessory drive. See that condenser, that's that vintage air. We have been working on getting his intercooler. We made a little bracket. That's going to bolt up here and then hang down and let the intercooler hang back there. Got just enough room for that. This one's pretty close too. A B&M Stealth Pro Ratchet shifter in there. Dakota Digital. The big posts over here are his 12-volt sources from the battery. The little strips is keyed ignitions. Relocated the coils to the inside. There's Dakota Digital. Had that 3D printed for his switches, his button, and his Holley screen. Now we do have a lot going on around here right now. We've got several vehicles here for full engine builds. We've got several swaps here. And we're trying to get them done as fast as we can, but at the same time, we're trying to slow down a little bit and bring you guys more content. I'm just going to kind of do a walk around today, show you guys what we got going on, and we're going to try to just record a little bit throughout each day, show you guys updates, small little how-tos, and just kind of take it week by week. Try to do an upload a week. We'll see how it goes. Got this old long bed out here. Just about everything to swap it. I think the only thing left I got to get is an ECM full swap. It's getting a 5.3, stock 5.3, brand new 4L60, Tim Smith, BP Automotive swap harness. I'm doing an 87 TBI tank, quantum drop-in fuel pump, AN lines all the way to the front. It's going to be a clean swap when we're done with it. Of course, we got a cam swap for our truck coming pretty soon. This was one of my old cars right here. Traded it to this guy that has it now, and it came in for some pretty minor work and needed some pretty extensive work. So the block's actually up at Mike Lau's shop getting machine work right now, and he's going to send that back with a set of oversized pistons, and we're going to build a fresh 6.0 with a little bit of extra cubic inches in it. Another car, if you follow us on TikTok, you've probably seen it. Little F-body Trans Am. It's getting a 383 stroker. I ordered a stroker kit from BTR. Between there and here, the crank got dropped and bent the reluctor wheel. So when the block work for this car is done, the crank for this one will get taken up there, and Mike's going to swap the reluctor wheel out for us, get that taken care of. And we've also got the truck that was in our very first episode of Specs and Stories, the Austin Cup 69 C10. It's going to be coming in soon for an oil pump, smaller blower pulley, E85 conversion, fresh tune, a couple other little things. So y'all be on the lookout for that. We're also talking to somebody about swapping I think it's an 85 square body. He's wanting to do a little 6.2 in there with a cam, Holley high ram, Holley Terminator. It's either a turbo 350 or a 700R Ford truck. But if we land that job will be turned into an episode as well. And let us know in the comments if you want to see one full long episode on a swap, like the blue long bed out front, or if you would like to see us break it down into multiple videos and more like a series and try to touch down on more in-depth stuff. You know, it's kind of hard for us to shoot content and make sure that we're getting work done in a timely manner. But at the same time, I understand that we're going to have to slow down a little bit to be able to document this stuff and make full episodes out of it. And I would really like to transition from making so many TikToks here to YouTube. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make that transition. With that being said, it wouldn't be possible without you guys, our subscribers, our followers, the people sharing our videos. So that's all we ask, man. We ask that you smash that subscribe button, drop us a like, drop us a comment, let us know what you think about the episodes. If there's something you want to see, let us know. We'll try to cover it. I'm going to try to start doing a lot more in-depth stuff. Of course, you know, we learn every day. We don't know it all. But when it comes to LS and the modern LT, we know a lot. So we want to help as much as we can and try to make your swap go smooth. You know, help you guys get parts lists together for these DOD deletes. Hop over to 727motorsports.net. We got a ton of merch over there. Shirts, hoodies, hats. If you want to sweat your ass off in the middle of summer and grab you a hoodie. We got some stickers on there. We want a little aftermarket camshaft. We're direct dealers for BTR. So we got cam kits on the website. Website's growing. We're going to try to get back on there and get some more new stuff added as well. But hey, it's just me and my wife here, and when we got a part-time helper. And it's a busy job, not only trying to run the shop, but make the content, keep our social media presence up, and make sure that our website stays relevant and up to date. But anyway, we're about to dive back into this C10, wire up some injectors. And that just shows you right there how cheap these things are. Every single one of these come apart a lot easier than that. And that's why we're going to hardwire these in. I guess moral of the story is, when you're running these adapters for the injectors and you start having problems, you can't go off just color wire, and you have to be able to find your stock connector end views and pinouts and figure out exactly where each wire is supposed to go, or else you're just going to be chasing your tail like this. You know, and like I said, if you take a test light and you put it on that injector, oh, well, that pin's hot, okay, and then you check for ohm resistance and you've got 0.3 to 0.5 ohms from your injector all the way to the ECM, it's tricking your mind thinking, man, we've got power, we've got the control circuit, why is this thing not pulsing? And the only reason we found out this thing actually wasn't pulsing was we sat here and tried to crank it, and we turned the key a couple times, and then we pulled a spark plug out. The spark plugs are bone dry. They look brand spanking new. So that tells me right there, okay, something's just not right. And that's when I really started diving in and looking up connector end views and pinning out these pigtails and figuring out, are the wires going where they're supposed to go? And the answer was, no, they were not. They were flipped in our adapters, and they were flipped at the harness on the truck, which in return is making it to where they're just not pulsing like they're supposed to. But hey, we're going to dive back into this thing. We're going to try to get these things soldered up and connected, and see if we can't get this thing to bang off in the next couple hours before we have to go to the house. So you see, this is something we deal with a lot. I've had customers argue with me and tell me that quality parts don't matter. And it's the same people that complain about their swaps, have a bunch of problems out of them, and then want to argue with you when you tell them what they need. Really, I only see these problems out of swaps that weren't started in my shop. I've had people complain because I'm super picky on the parts that I want to use. But I don't typically have problems like this out of a vehicle that came in here with a motor and transmission in it. We pulled it out and put an LS in its place. Most of the time it is ones that the motor and trans was installed somewhere else and somebody tried to wire it up. Oh, they heard it run off a can of ether. Yeah, well, if your injectors were wired up right and we had quality extension harnesses, then maybe you could have heard it run on more than a can of ether. Unfortunately, it's the name of the game, especially when you have YouTube and Google forums and everything telling people that you can do a swap for this cheap. And then you've got all these companies that are just putting out junk parts all over the internet, and because they're $10 cheaper for a set of adapter pigtails, people go with those instead of buying a reputable brand and a reputable part. And guys, I'm all for buying some Amazon parts, eBay parts, but check the reviews, make sure you're buying name brand stuff. Or if it comes in and it looks like ass, don't trust it to be reliable just because it's brand new. And when you're doing an LS swap, never think that quality parts don't matter. The guys that say that have never done a swap themselves. They may have owned an LS swap, they never did the swap themselves. And if they're driving around in a swap telling you quality parts don't matter, they're either lying to you about what they have in their car, or their shit probably has issues. That's just the truth of it. But we're almost done wiring up bank 2 injectors, harnesses. We started from scratch. Showed you guys why. We get these done, we should be able to see if this thing will start before we go home today. So it's Wednesday evening. We had some things to handle today. We worked on that black C10 most of the day. It's still giving us trouble. The injectors aren't wanting to pulse. We're gonna dive back into that tomorrow. I'll film more on that. I was just so focused on trying to get that thing running today that I didn't film a lot. So forgive me for that. I've got to go up to our tattoo shop in Jonesboro and do a small tattoo. So I thought, hey, this would be a good opportunity. Let's just get some cruising footage. I'm gonna drive the square body up there, mount the GoPro on the windshield, and we'll get some time-lapse footage, and I'll talk to you guys a little bit along the way. But yeah, I've got to roll out, so I'm about to fire this thing up, let it warm up a little bit, and then cruise out and head south to Jonesboro. put in a solid about 6 hours today messing with that black C10. The footage last night that I actually wired up number 7 injector plug backwards of what I was trying to do. And that happened to be the spark plug that had fuel on it. So that got me thinking last night to go in this morning, double check that injector plug and see, try to figure out why that's the only one that's pulsed. The thing we did was we made sure all the injectors were pinned to the correct injector number in the PCM. I've got constant key 12 volt source at the injectors, but the PCM is not pulsing them. All the wires on them out, everything looks great, but the injectors just aren't pulsing. On the injectors out, they're within spec, so I don't think it's the injectors. It's hard to pinpoint it as the ECM without another ECM to try. But one thing that's keeps crossing my mind is the injector pigtails, the adapters that we were messing with at the beginning of this video yesterday, how they pulled out of those terminals super easy. I reused the EV6 end and the wires out of those because they didn't pull out of the EV6 so well. But it is a chance that the terminated leads on the end of that, inside that EV6 connector, are spread out so far that they're not making good contact with the rest of the injectors. Because here's what's odd. First thing we thought was the PCM is not pulsing the injectors because we had 0 pulse at any injector. Then we got number 7 to pulse. So why aren't the rest of them pulsed? Gotta be a wiring issue at this point, or a faulty ECM. Not convinced it's bad injectors. So tomorrow when we go in, I've got a set of 269 Motorsports or Michigan Motorsports EV6 terminated connectors, and we're gonna redo them one more time and try that. And maybe those brand new, good quality name brand connectors are going to be tight enough within the terminal that they'll actually bite the spade on the injector. That's my game plan. Things don't always work out as you want, and you can't always call them as you go. Sometimes you fix one problem to find another underlying problem, or sometimes you overlook a problem trying to fix a problem. You have to backpedal and fix it. Either way, we're gonna get that thing running. We're gonna get it all figured out. And I would really like to share the process with you guys. Today it was just, man, we were doing the same thing we did yesterday. We were just chasing our tails, ohming wires out all day. We ohmed out the crank sensor, we ohmed out the cam sensor and the wires. We ohmed out all the injectors, we ohmed out the injector wires. We went through and made sure that the PCM had every keyed source and every ground that it needed, along with every constant 12 volt source straight from the battery. So, man, it's just a game of trial and error and playing with it, running diagnostics on it, and trying to get it figured out. But right now I have well over a dozen hours in diagging why the injectors won't fire off of this thing. And to be quite frank, it's just ridiculous. Like, I should have done figured it out by now. And I've chased my tail a couple times, confused myself. It can happen, man. It's wiring. That's why nobody wants to mess with wiring. But I tend to be pretty damn good at figuring these things out. So I'm not gonna give up. We're gonna keep trying. And just wish I would quit eating up days of my week. But hey, anyway, we're gonna run down here and knock this tattoo out. I'm gonna mount this GoPro up on the windshield. Get you guys some time-lapse footage of the little cruise down some Arkansas back roads in the summertime. Alright, so it's Thursday. We've been fighting that C10 over there all week. We're going to fight it some more this afternoon. But I need to put some hours in on this Nova. We've got it pretty damn close. One of the biggest things is I need to get it over on the rack so I can do the fuel system in it. We've got a big Aeromotive fuel pump, some massive AM PTFE lines. I need to get all that stuff put in the car. I'm really trying to do it laying on my back over here in a flat. So finding a spot, an open spot on the schedule on the rack is not the problem. It's trying to get everything else done to where the car is ready to go over there. But I'll flip this thing around and kind of go over what we got going on and what we got left to do. Alright, so we got his Mighty Mouse catch can on and ran. We've got the Holly coming out of the firewall back there. And we've got all the wires tucked down as best as we can under the cog belt for the blower. This is a Speed Engineering cold air intake, a universal LS swap cold air intake. Of course, you know me, I try to hide stuff, so the mat sensor for the Holly system's down here, and I made a little custom bracket to where it holds it solid, and I just really like the way it comes off the blower and curves over the alternator away from the belt and puts the filter right here away from everything. A little bit about this belt drive. LS Simple, the guy bought it secondhand, and LS Simple said that it was for a truck, but when we got it here and it was all bolted on, spacing wasn't right with our water pump and our balancer. Me and Sammy messed with it one day, was playing with the spacing on it, and we got it figured out to where it lines up good. This mid plate right here, it came up kind of crazy and like was real boxy up here, and the cold air intake wouldn't go on the throttle body, so we cut that off straight, and that's some black rattle can blended with the powder coat, pretty decent. Not 100% sure that this pulley setup is gonna be what we want. It's the best thing I could find to keep a lot of coverage on the pulleys, so we're gonna try it. You know, coming around this idler here and over the blower and then back down gives us quite a bit on the blower pulley, and then everything else is kind of covered as good as factory or better. Of course, it's a 69, so it's a non-power steering car, so it's got a delete pulley down there for that. We do have some hose clamps we got to put on the radiator hoses today. Of course, all these hoses right here for our vintage air. We've got our AC hoses. Still got our wiring that's got to come in. But I found it a lot easier to get these cars running and then finish installing the AC. Especially when you're talking about all the ductwork and stuff that goes in the dash. You know, I like my wiring to be done and make sure that the car's going to run like we want it to before we start buttoning all this stuff up. Now, in order to finish our cooling system for the supercharger, you know, we've got an inlet and an outlet here. Picked up a Racetronics reservoir, some AN adapters to bring them to bigger lines, because unfortunately 6AN was as big as they offered us in this. We sent the cap down and had LSX laser engraved in it. The idea is to mount it right here, but I'm not real sure I like that yet. So I wanted to get the inner fender in and see maybe if it looked better over here. And kind of tuck down more in the corner a little bit, you know, because we want it clean and tight and neat. But I found these LSs don't really like cooling system without a reservoir. We're going to try to run it like this because we don't really have a good port on the radiator to run to a reservoir. You know, the radiator is designed to be sealed and pressure cap and everything, but we may end up having to put a reservoir on this thing, and if we do, then we're going to order another one of these engraved like Magnuson or Supercharger or something like that, so he knows which one is which. We'll mount one on one side, and we'll mount one on the other side. But these things aren't very cheap. These nice aluminum pieces, they're kind of costly, so I'm not trying to just jump in and make the customer order something that he doesn't necessarily need. So we're going to try to get this thing running first and see if it likes just the radiator and if it'll stay cool with just the radiator. And if not, then we'll move forward from there. Alright, so here's his intercooler. We made this bracket. It's going to bolt up here. It's going to take this bolt out and this will slide up in between there. And it's going to bolt directly to right there. Which in return, we'll put this intercooler somewhere in this general area. I had it in here the other day. And then we'll use some spacers and longer bolts to mount it to the bottom of the core support here and keep it off the condenser. Now we do have one more line that comes out of the condenser and goes down and around the core support. And then, as you can tell under here under the jack shaft, I've got the map sensor, which is great for the Holly system. He has bought a glow shift multi-gauge, and this shows him his boost. We're going to do a coolant temp on the supercharger side, so he has a readout for that. And then it also has an exhaust temperature sensor and gives you a readout for that as well, for like a turbo application. We're going to set it up for, we want the boost and the engine coolant temp side of this. With having that map sensor down there by that jack shaft, I'm limited on where I can put a sensor for boost to run to this thing. What we're going to do is we're going to come out of the blower with AN line, probably 4 AN, and I'm either going to come out with a 90 and try to go under the jack shaft and stay away from it, or we're going to have to come up right next to it and find a way to fasten that to the blower and keep it secure and away from the jack shaft. And then we're going to run up to the firewall or somewhere on an inner fender or something, and we're going to do a vacuum boost block, which will give him multiple ports for boost out, boost output. And all right, so the way this cooling system works on this blower is it's gonna have coolant going in your intercooler under the blower here, and then it's going to come out this port here, and it's going to go to our reservoir that I just showed you. It's going to dump into the reservoir, and then it's going to come out of the reservoir. It's going to go through this pump. Once it comes out of this pump, it's going to go through the heat exchanger. It's going to be in front of the condenser, and then after it comes out of that heat exchanger, it's going to come back around and go back into the blower. Now, it's common for them to be standalone, and it's also common for them to be tied to an engine side. And unfortunately, when you tie that to the coolant that's running through your engine block and keeping your engine cool too, that's running at 210 degrees, you're automatically setting yourself up for fighting temperatures that you don't want to see. Granted, the blower's mounted to the motor, the blower's going to get hot, the blower's going to generate its own amount of heat. But having it on its own standalone circuit, or as far as the coolant system goes, it's found to be the desired way to go. So we're definitely going to keep the engine on its own side, and we're going to put the blower on its own side. Sooner or later, we'll be able to get the inner fenders in, get our AC dryer mounted up down here in the inner fender, figure out where we're going to put our pump and our reservoir exactly, and get all that stuff bolted up and plumbed. This thing will be one step closer to firing off. All right, so when you look these blowers up, it shows that it's for a 07 and up truck, like a G8 or a 5th gen Camaro with the LS3 in it, which all those vehicles are a drive-by-wire throttle body. And if you notice here, we have a fast big mouth, and that is a drive-by cable throttle body. So we're going to run a stainless braided throttle cable, just as we do on most of our throttle bodies. But here's the kicker. Being as this blower is designed for a drive-by-wire throttle body, I've had a hell of a time finding a throttle cable bracket for this thing. I emailed Magnuson, I called Magnuson and left a message. Nobody ever returned my call. I'm starting to begin, they don't make one, and they're just not too concerned with customer service. So what we're doing here is, I had Eddie from Fab Lab, a good buddy of ours. He's got the square body Suburban that's bagged on 24s. He does almost all of our metal work, him and another company here in town. And we had him make this bracket right here. And our idea is bolt this thing in right here at the blower case and have the throttle cable come through it. And it lines up almost perfect. It lines up better than the ICT billet one that we have on the Jegs intake over there with the Holley Sniper 92mm on the square body. This should work. We've just got to shorten our cable and the sleeve for it a little bit. But before we do that, we're going to send this thing down the road to our friends at Arkansas Powder Coating, and we're going to have them powder coat this thing satin black and blast all this rust off of it for us and make it look good. And then we'll probably send it down and have our buddy Kevin laser engrave something for it for Eddie's company Fab Lab. That's the plan on that. Okay, one thing I wasn't too thrilled about with this blower is the way the fuel rails and fuel system is ran. For one, it's 6 AN, so once we get to the rails, everything's reduced. Not a big fan of that, but that's what's on the Magnuson blower. The biggest problem is we come in on the rail right here. As you can tell, I've got this massive 10 AN fitting here with a 3/8 quick connect. So we're bottlenecking fuel as soon as we get to right here. And then once it goes into the fuel rail, our fuel rails may have decent volume, but we have two crossovers that are both 6 AN. And of course, we tied in our Holley fuel pressure sensor into right here in the front. We got it tidy, but there's just really not enough room to upgrade these to 8 AN. And we're going to have to do something in the back because right now, fuel's only coming in and it's just looping through the entire fuel rail system. We need a return. So I'm going to have to cap one side off, let it come in here, run through the driver fuel rail, cross over the passenger side, go down the passenger fuel rail, and then we're going to try to come out of the back side of the passenger fuel rail and go to our regulator, which will then feed return back to the tank. You want to regulate after your fuel rails, that way you're never starving the fuel at the rails. If anything, you're always overpowered. But the coil relocate turned out really nice on this car, as it typically does when we hide the coils and do an ICT billet plug wires. Emma labels them all for us, but they tend to not stick all the time. The speed engineering usually is really good about giving us enough clearance to hide that stuff and get it tucked away. All right, so the customer's end goal with this car is he's not like a racer or anything, but he wants to take and do stuff like cruise the coast, maybe power tour. So the whole plan with this car and trying to build this car is, for one, make sure that it's reliable, it's easy to troubleshoot, and easy to maintain. He's down in Mississippi or down in Florida or something, away from home, and has an issue. It's not just a nightmare trying to figure it out. So we've made a lot of things very easily serviceable. He's going to have a console built that goes around the shifter and the coil packs. We've talked about doing a couple breakaway covers that will allow him easy access to the coils. We do still have to wire up our coil harnesses and plug them into our extension harnesses here. Fan wires here, tack and a speedo. We did run the neutral safety down to the shifter. So it's going to be a key on. That's going to enable this switch here. But if the car is not in park or neutral, this switch is not going to do anything. But this switch is going to run up to this relay over here inside the dash, and then it completes our circuit and goes down to the starter and enables the starter for us. We put him a couple toggles in. We don't really have those dedicated to anything just yet, but we wanted him to have options there. We did have to cut his bezel out for the vintage air control, and he did opt in for the upgraded electric control. It's not back. Of course, we do have a Dakota digital dash we're putting in this thing. We mounted his module up in the dash. It's the HDX. So there's this control box for it. And then his Holley terminator is right up here. We took a piece of black textured acrylic and we put some rubber edges on it, and we made him a shelf that can be popped and just kind of drop down. And his Holley terminator PCM is mounted up directly right there. So we did a battery relocate to the trunk. We did put a 300 amp breaker in the back. That way if he parks the car for winter, he can kill the breaker. You don't have to worry about disconnecting the battery. We did do an Optima red top and a nice billet mount for it. So of course the only wires we have running all the way to the back of the car are this 0 gauge here and then our Holley terminator power wires. Everything else is going to come off of our junction blocks that we mounted up on the firewall. It looks far away, but this thing's a lot closer than it appears, especially from when it came in here. When it came in here, it had the motor and trans in it, but the oil pan was hitting the subframe a little bit. We pulled the motor out of this car probably half a dozen times within just a few hours. There's our fuel pump, there's our regulator, 2 big ass filters, and then there's all our lines and adapters and connectors that we should need. Do still have a few things left to get. We've got to get him a splitter cable for his Holley. That way we don't have to unplug the 3.5 inch screen to be able to tune. We got to get that boost block that we were talking about. But we're about to get to work on this thing, try to knock some stuff out on it, get this heat exchanger bolted up, and we might work on some stuff on the inside a little bit, knock some stuff off the list. Alright, so I got the heat exchanger bolted up at the top. See what I was talking about? Then I've got these little spacers here. This side's like perfect. I'll have to get some probably 2 or 2.5 inch self tappers though. I'm gonna stop and grab some of those in the morning. Get one of these over here. Like that. On the screw. See it. And then I got another one to put on the other side. But as you can tell, we're a little off, so we'll probably have to stack a smaller one in there. I've got some smaller ones. We'll probably have to stack one of those in there. But we'll get that finished up tomorrow, and that'll get this 100% solid. Alright, so I'm gonna go ahead and get the coil harnesses finished up. Get them all plugged in and zip tied back and out of the way. So check that thing off the list. So let's dive into that. Okay, so what I did here was I put a little bit of blue painter's tape on my passenger side coil pack extension harness. So that way I know which one goes where. So that means this one right here is going to go to the driver's side. This one's going to go to the passenger side. So then we're going to try to zip tie everything back so it's just neat and tidy. And when they go to do the console, there's nothing in their way. Should look good in the end though. Alright guys, I just want to show y'all something real quick, a little tech tip. So it doesn't matter what side of the engine you're standing on. Whether you're standing on the driver's side, fender, looking at the motor, or you're standing on the passenger side fender, looking at the motor. This rule is going to apply to both sides, okay? Now if you look at our coil pack harness, we got a pink wire, purple wire, it's like a brown wire, and a black wire. On this one we've got a pink wire, a blue wire, a brown wire, a black wire. So that shows us we've only got one wire that's different, and it's going to be that purple and that blue, that second wire. See, this one's purple, this one's blue, this one's green, and this one's red. So this one's chafed through on the back side. This is just a rail of coil packs I pulled out of the parts cabinet over here. So it's purple, blue, green, red. On the driver's side, this would be cylinder 1, 3, 5, 7. On the passenger side, when you're looking at it, you have 2, 4, 6, 8. But if you hook these wires up, looking at it exactly the same, left to right of the coil pack bracket, and go purple, blue, green, red. With that being said, maybe it'll help you. Maybe you've got a different way you can find to remember that. Or maybe you don't even care enough to remember it. You look it up every time. Or you'll come find this YouTube video and fast forward and find the part I'm talking about. It doesn't matter what side of the engine you're standing on, from left to right, purple, blue, green, red. All right, and like I said, today's Thursday, so tomorrow we'll be closing the week out, trying to get done what we can. We got a couple things, small little jobs we got to do. But Saturday we're going to Wynne, Arkansas for a massive annual car show and festival down there called Farm Fest. It's a real big popular event in our area, and we're gonna go down there and just hang out. We're not working the event, we're not setting nothing up, it's not our event. We're just going to show out and show love to another local car group that does events like that, and to the town of Wynne, and in remembrance of multiple people. It's a really big event, man. They're gonna have food trucks, they've got all kinds of stuff going on, a bunch of trophies, you know, and really we're just looking at it like a good way to kind of do what we did last time and cruise down there as a group, maybe shoot a little content for you guys, talk to some people about their rides, and cruise back home, you know. But if you're in Northeast Arkansas, Northwest Mississippi, West Tennessee, Southeastern Missouri, man, come out and hang out. It's gonna be a good time. We're gonna be running around just chilling, videoing, checking stuff out, looking at cars, having a good time, eating some good food. We got a group of our friends going down there. We're gonna cruise down there. We're gonna run pretty much the same lineup that we drove down to the Fat Boys Garage Show. It's gonna be the Square Body, Emma's Vet, Jared's Yukon, Eddie's Bourbon, and man, it's gonna be a good time. You guys, like I said, if you're in the area, come out and hang out. By the time I get done cutting this episode and get it uploaded, that should be filmed and ready to cut down, and it should be right behind this one. That's the plan. So we'll try to keep content coming for you guys, but at the same time, I got to keep turning wrenches on these cars and making sure we're getting stuff done. I'm about to dive back into this. Alright, so the radiator hoses have now got clamps on them. We're going to bring this one down and fasten it to the fan. Keep it nice and low, tucked out of the way. This thing's starting to come together though. Alright, so that's pretty much going to sum up today's work on the Nova. We're going to get back on the C10 for a little bit and try to mess with it. I've got a set of 269 Motorsports injector pigtails, EV6 style. They're brand new, so the pins aren't all messed up. I think I'm just gonna try to go ahead and change these out one more time and hope to God that we're just not getting signal at those other injectors because of loose terminals within an EV6 connector. That's the idea. If that's actually the case or not, at this point, who knows? We're just gonna have to keep trying things and keep diving in until we figure something out. You know, we ohmed out the engine harness yesterday and all the injector plugs, and to the end of the plug with a multimeter and the TPA off of the connector, everything checked out fine. But when you plug them in, for some reason they're not firing. Swap these things out, solder these new ones in one more time, and we'll go from there. But I'm not gonna bore y'all with the time-lapse footage of me soldering these things in again. It's pretty much gonna be the same thing as the day before, so the day before yesterday. So we're not gonna do that to you. We're gonna go ahead and jump in. I'm gonna knock this out and see what we can come up with from there. All right, so we got all those swapped out, and that did not change anything. I had Emma try to crank it, and I stuck my hand on a couple different injectors, and you cannot feel them pulsing. I do not have a injector laser diode, so I busted out an old injector. Holding this in your hand and her cranking the truck, you can feel it pulse. We tested multiple injectors, pigtails, and you can feel it pulse through all of them. So that tells us the ECM's good, our wiring is now good. Now we need a set of injectors. Probably from this thing sitting for so long with old junk fuel in it. Get with the customer, see what he wants to do about that, and go from there. In the meantime, we've been working on a ton of spring cleaning at home. We're about to go ahead and call it a day. Head to the house, finish up a couple things we need to do there, and then I'll probably cut down today's footage and get ready for tomorrow. So that's gonna wrap up our Thursday. Bring you guys more tomorrow. All right, so it's Friday. Talked with this customer yesterday afternoon. We are gonna locate a set of injectors to put in this thing. Just keep trying at it. But for now, we're gonna unhook the battery and push this thing back outside so we can get something else in here and be productive today. Y'all followed us along. We worked on this Nova quite a bit. We got some more things to do to it. Our truck outside, we gotta take to Jonesboro and drop off at a exhaust shop and have some exhaust work done. We got an oil sending unit to put in a Yukon, but we'll cover that here in a little bit. We're gonna try to close this week out with a solid episode for you guys. We got the car show to go to tomorrow, but it's supposed to rain today, tomorrow, and Sunday, I think. And the car show, or the event, is apparently rain or shine. So, looks like we may be road tripping the square body down there, some Rain-X. Emma's car is on drag radials, and a couple weeks ago when we went to Benton, we discovered that if it's raining, that car probably doesn't need to leave. But we got to find an alternative, because if it's raining, we can't take Emma's car, which means we're going to have to ride 4 deep in the square body, which we've done, but man, I ain't really trying to do that for like an hour and 15 minutes in the rain with no wipers. We're going to figure something out. We're going to get a game plan for that. And of course, y'all will see what we come up with for that whole situation in the next episode. Small little quick job real quick. We start this thing up, it ain't got any oil pressure on the dash. It does have a check engine light. I assume it's probably for that. We will pull the codes anyway. We can tell it has oil pressure though. The motor doesn't sound bad. Don't hear any noises at all. We've got an AC Delco sensor, our sending unit, 1267 3134. About to slide this bad boy in there and see if we can get some oil pressure on the dash. The snap-on scanner was dead, so we're going to do this with the laptop. HP tuners. Just a good old key on. Connect to this thing. PO 521 and 523. Cleared those. Let's see what we got. We got oil pressure back on the dash. A little under 40 pounds. Alright, so now that that's taken care of, this thing can go to the house, go home. This is actually the guy that owns our shop building that we rent it from. It's his wife's daily driver. She is ready to rock. Alright, so Emma's taking the square body down to the car wash to get it cleaned up for the show tomorrow. She's going to take the GoPro and get some time lapse of that. So while she does that, I've got to sit down and text a couple customers, get a couple things worked out. We're going to work on this Nova a little bit. Alright, so I took this thing back off. I got our other AC line put in. It's back there, loops up and around. We got this thing mounted up solid. About to shorten this hose a little bit. Probably aim it more back that way, kind of at an angle. Feed that one with it. Customer's going to be bringing a lug nut key because we can't get the inner fenders in until these front wheels can come off. Once we get the inner fenders in, I can mount the AC dryer up, a few other things, but in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and get the coolant reservoir for the supercharger mounted. I think I'm just going to go ahead and mount it right here. One line will go down, and then one will go straight out right here and come around. So Emma took this thing down, got it cleaned up. Just shine up the wheels. Ready to go to the show tomorrow. Put that piece of electrical tape down there. Just hanging out. I'll cut that shit off. Got the reservoir for the supercharger mounted up. Some spacers on it since it's kind of curved a little bit. Mounted up pretty nice though. And then I've made a bracket to hold the coolant pump, and it kind of like hooks on the bottom of the core support, and then it'll have one screw that holds it here. It'll hang there. And then we'll shorten this hose, take a couple inches off, bring this hose up, and it'll run straight to the coolant pump. Then the hose that feeds the coolant pump, where it comes in, it'll come from the bottom of the coolant reservoir. Alright, so the owner of that car, his engine block has been at Mike Lau's, getting worked. He went and picked that up today, and he was kind enough to drop off the crankshaft for that car. Actually, he didn't even drop it off, he sat and waited on it. And Mike changed the reluctor wheel on the forged crank for this thing for me. So now we have everything we need to build both these engines, minus we're waiting on a set of pistons to come in for the Camaro. We had to go 40 over on the block. Mike said it just didn't want to clean up until they got to about 40 over. So he's got us a set of pistons coming for this thing. They should be here, I think he said Wednesday or Thursday. Pistons and rings. We had to go ahead and throw in the cam bearings for us, save us a little bit of time. We're gonna bag this thing up, put it away until his pistons and rings come in. Did a fluid check. We're gonna let this thing cool off a little bit, try to get this engine bay cleaned up for tomorrow. Emma's been working getting the rest of the truck cleaned up. She's got the windshield looking good. Need to paint this damn hood. But you know, when the hood's popped at a car show, ain't nobody looking at the top of it. The bottom looks good. So, if you're curious what's going on in here, it's just a little stock bottom end 6-liter. LQ9 with a stage 4 BTR cam. We got this little $300 junkyard transmission in it that's now showing some clutch material on the dipstick. We've got a used eBay converter in here that's left the starting on quite a bit of nitrous from a buddy of ours. As of right now, this thing still has the stock 10 bolt with a 308 open diff, and we're managing it with a Holley Terminator X-Max. This is our shop truck we call Panda. It's built for a friend we went to high school with that passed away from cancer. Now, we put this truck together in a very short time. You can kind of follow that build series on TikTok. We broke it down into multiple videos, all the way from pulling the 305 and turbo 350 out, to painting and cleaning the engine bay, to getting the 6-liter in it, to wiring up the digital dash and the Holley system, fuel system, all the parts we used. We did front and rear roll pans on the truck. Phantom grill was already in it. And we did add a sheet metal splitter on the front and did some custom little side skirts on it. When we first got the truck running, we had it sitting on a set of jegs wheels. 15-inch is a drag pack. Now we've got a set of jegs spikes for it. 15-inch in the back, 17s in the front. We haven't put those on yet because we need one tire. So right now we're rolling on some 20-inch Riddlers. But man, this truck's just fun to drive. It's fun to get out, take to some shows. It gets a lot of attention. And of course, it's got a cool story, so we like talking about it. Almost 2,500 miles on the build now. We're gonna let this thing cool off for a little bit and try to polish it up. All right, so that's gonna conclude this week. We're getting ready to finish up cleaning up this truck and then going home. I'll rest up and get ready for this car show tomorrow. I really hope you guys enjoyed following us through the week and kind of seeing what we had going on. You know, just a quick recap. We chased our tail for days and days on some injector issues in a truck. Really shouldn't have spent that much time on it, but we did. We're going to locate that customer a set of injectors, get him a quote, and get some injectors on the way, and hopefully next week we can try again with that rig. We made some leadway on the 69 Nova LS swap. We got some things bolted up. We got some things planned out. We're a few more steps closer to firing that thing up. So like I said, we're going to film the car show tomorrow. We're going to share that with you guys. And then next week when we come back in, we got a few pretty big things to work on, but I think you guys will enjoy. We're going to work some more on the 69 Nova, hopefully work more on that custom Deluxe C10. And then we've got a forged bottom end 383 stroker to build, and we've got a 40/60 to build. Both blocks were worked by Mike Lau up in Missouri. 383 is a BTR bottom end. We're excited to get both of these built next week. Probably won't see the pistons for the 60 until later in the week, but we're really going to be pushing to get the 383 built and try to get it back in the car. And then we're really going to be pushing to get that 6-liter built. You guys follow us along on that. We've also got a C7 out front with a destroyed torque tube, a demolished oil pan. The customer stopped by today and dropped off a deposit for the oil pan, so we're going to get that ordered. We'll probably see that before the week's over next week. That'll probably come in the following week. We're going to have a 2015 or 17, I don't know what year it is, but it's a 2000 something C7 Corvette, and we're gonna have the body of it in the air on this lift and the entire drivetrain laid out on the floor. You guys stay tuned for that. That's gonna be a fun one. We'll see what else we can get ourselves into next week. But until then, you guys smash that subscribe button. Let us know what you want to see in the comments. Let us know if you're liking the content that we're bringing. And remember, go follow us on TikTok, Facebook, and that's about it, because I don't fuck around with nothing else. And until next time, we'll see y'all later.